Hi everyone, Discordian Kitty here. Player housing is on its way and Blizzard has asked us for feedback about what we'd like to see. I've wanted this feature for about as long as I can remember. I'm a big player housing fan. It's literally the only thing I ever play any Elder Scrolls game for. I loved the Mr. Pandaria farm, and I didn't love them, but I did really want garrisons to be successful. Which is all just to say I've spent far too long thinking about this. Not only what I'd want to see, but what would actually work. What would be some of the best, most important additions to player housing in World of Warcraft? I have plenty of ideas, and because this is a lore channel, I really wanted to focus on the things that I most believe would help turn any player's home into a Loremasters haven, a place where players can relax and immerse themselves in World of Warcraft's history and lore from the comfort of their own in-game homes, starting with a home theatre system. Just about everyone has already suggested libraries, and I will get into that in a minute myself. But let's be a little bit more ambitious for a minute and go a bit more modern. One garrison feature that was actually very popular was the jukebox, where players could go around and collect music from all over World of Warcraft, which they could then take home and play at will. From everything we've heard about player housing so far, something similar will absolutely make their way into our houses as well. But what if we could collect more than music? What if, for example, we could collect cinematics and cutscenes? We've just been to Undermine, where they have hamburgers, jazz music, and cars. Don't you think it's about time goblins helped bring moving pictures to World of Warcraft as well? World of Warcraft is known for its cinematics, and the in-game menu does allow us to already play some of those, usually only one per expansion. Sometimes NPCs will offer to show you a cinematic, usually when it relates to a quest that you're on. But what if you could collect cinematics and cutscenes by witnessing them in-game? What if those NPCs who show you a cinematic also offer to give you a reel of film to take home and play on your own little goblin-made projector? What if you wanted to, for example, reminisce about Battle for Azeroth by replaying all the old soldier cinematics? Even better, what if this allowed you to dress up for those cutscenes where your character is included? You know when a cutscene happens and you're not expecting it, so you're just not dressed appropriately? Like when you've just equipped a new item and it's messed up your transmog and you haven't fixed it yet? It makes for some very funny screenshots, sure, but wouldn't it be great if you could also go back and replay the cutscene with a different outfit or even a different character? I think a home theatre system would be amazing, and I even think it might already be planned. In the upcoming lore walking feature, Lorewalker Cho offers to take us through old quests, which sometimes includes revisiting cutscenes we may not have seen for a long time. One example is the Legion questline to obtain Xalatath, which usually has to be played through on a Shadow Priest. Thanks to Lorewalker Cho, we can play this quest on any character, which means we can get footage of any one of our characters claiming Xalatath, whether they're a priest or not. It's well known that a lot of the things we're seeing in World of Warcraft these days were developed as part of the preparation for player housing, and I can't help but suspect lore walking is one of those things. I'm already pretty excited about being able to replay these cutscenes on any character in any outfit anytime I want, but if Blizzard added collectible film reels every time we experience an in-game cinematic or cutscene, the potential is limitless. Just imagine having the motivation of playing through old questlines because you're hunting reels for your film collection. It could even add a whole new motivation to events like Remix. Speaking of Lorewalker Cho, does anyone else think this is going to be something we can place in or outside our own houses? People have spoken about the hope that we could get NPCs or even alts to visit us inside of our homes. And while that's a great idea, one of the potential problems with it is pathing. You can't let an NPC wander around a home if they don't know where the walls are. They'll keep walking into things. There has been some suggestion of allowing players to create the pathing themselves, like they do in Elder Scrolls Online. But another thing that absolutely works is having a placeable station, like an NPC chair that only NPCs can be seen sitting on. Something like Lorewalker Cho's bench is perfect. For the moment, lore walking is going to be a feature we can find in Dornegal, which is all very well for the war within. But what about when we move on? player housing is going to be introduced around the same time that we'll be saying goodbye to the city. Usually, I'd expect Cho's bench to be moved to Stormwind and Orgrimmar, but maybe it'll be moved to our new player neighborhoods. As far as we know, Blizzard is hoping for lore walking to be a more long-term feature, which is exactly what they're hoping for player housing as well. I could see a lore walking bench become an unlockable furniture item for player homes and for player neighborhoods. It might even be introduced as one of the first neighborhood rewards that players are encouraged to work towards. But if we are talking Lorewalker Cho in neighborhoods, something I absolutely suspect we'll see there is a lore walking stage, like the one we had during the anniversary event. That event had a bunch of little player housing hints. The trophies we're going to be able to get on our walls and the barbershop mirrors we'll be able to have in our houses are just 2 examples. In retrospect, now that we know about neighborhoods, Lorewalker Cho's plays seem almost custom designed for them, and that could just simply be because they were. Talking of neighborhood features, one thing I would really love to see introduced to neighborhoods is a new version of the Garrison Tavern. Another one of the Garrison's better features, the Garrison Tavern was visited daily by NPCs offering a variety of quests. Some of these quests offered cosmetic rewards, like Lillian's warning sign or Gammon's braid. Some included quest details that led to lore speculation, like the quest The Huntress, where a cowled ranger asked us to collect a silver-lined arrow from the Shadowmoon burial ground. That quest was a hint that Alleria Windrunner was still alive. And, sure enough, Alleria and Turalyon turned up in the very next expansion, Legion. During Dragonflight, something similar was introduced with the Everywhere Inn, where dailies involving several time-traveling adventures offered rewards related to the Time Rift World event. Again, one of the most interesting things about these quests was the glimpses of lore they provided. I really love the idea of tavern visitors offering little quests that aren't necessarily groundbreaking, but that do help with world building. It's such a great way to drop a little hint or a joke or a reminder of some story that you want people to be thinking about. And while you could potentially have NPC visitors to our houses, I think this particular feature belongs in the neighborhood itself, over at the local Neighbourhood Tavern. Of course, I don't want any quests that did happen to become available this way to offer anything serious in the way of rewards. Tavern guests should stick to rewarding cosmetic items, lore tidbits, and maybe credit towards a related achievement. Then it wouldn't matter if not everyone bothered with it. Back to houses themselves. We've spoken about libraries on this channel before. Long before Taliesin went to the housing event in Boston and found out that at least some of the book decorations can be interacted with and read, I noticed evidence of that myself in the first Look at Housing blog post. Just saying, Taliesin, I know you didn't watch that video because nobody did, but if you had, then you would have known about this for ages, like I did. And okay, maybe you think I'm reading too much into this. Couldn't the books just be decorative objects? Why assume we'll be able to read them? Well, if you look closely at the demonstration, one of the books that we see being placed on the table is named Twilight's Blade Book 2. Compare that to the names of the other decorations we see, which have names like Forsaken Table and Goblin Casino Fancy Chair. But this book isn't named Medium Book Open, it's very clearly the name of the title of this particular book. And it's one of a series, which suggests there will be other books to discover and collect. Taliesin and others have since confirmed that some of the books are just decorative and not interactable, which makes sense, especially when you can see stacks of books listed in the Decorations tab. But the important thing is that it really does sound like all those books we've been able to discover and read around the world up until now are being converted into decorative items that we can take home and read in our own libraries. Which is awesome, of course. My very own in-game library
is the only thing I ever wanted.
But again, what if we got really ambitious? What if we could read real-life books in-game? One of the biggest complaints I've heard about World of Warcraft lore over the years is that no one should have to look outside of the game to understand the game's story. You shouldn't need to read a book that you can't even access inside the game to understand what's going on. The most infamous example of this happening was the book War Crimes, which took place between Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. In this story, Garrosh is placed on trial after his capture in the Siege of Orgrimmar, but he escapes with the help of a bronze dragon, and finds his way to alternate Draenor. To players who didn't read the book, we went from Garrosh being safely dealt with to alternate Draenor being a thing and Garrosh being at large without any real explanation. And I'm not saying I want that kind of outside the game storytelling back. I certainly don't. These days, the novels have done a much better job at supplementing the story we know rather than replacing important story beats that should have been done in-game. But I do think there's no reason why we can't have war crimes and other novels in-game. And I know, you're thinking, are you insane? Do you know how long War Crimes is versus how long any in-game book is? Are you seriously suggesting WoW have full-length novels? Genuinely, how can you even think that's possible? And to you I say, have you seen the printed out version of all the Elder Scrolls books? It's huge, and I read almost every one of those books standing in a bookshop in the Imperial City, so don't tell me it's not possible. I don't think most people would actually read all their World of Warcraft books primarily in-game, but I do think it'd just be a fun addition to any in-game library to match it to the real World of Warcraft libraries that we have outside of the game. At the very least, the short stories could be made available in-game, and with that home theater system, so could things like the audiobooks and the animated shorts. But for now, I'm going to move away from entertainment and talk about the one single thing I believe strongly that player housing needs: portals. Specifically, portals to smaller houses in cities. One thing Blizzard has been very clear and upfront about from the start is they don't want to risk isolating people with player housing. Garrisons did isolate players, and it was a disaster. Blizzard has been adamant that this time around, player housing will be social, which is probably why they've decided we're going to be in neighborhoods. And I admit, as great as neighborhoods sound, I am still a little disappointed, even now. I wanted an apartment in Donegal. I want to be able to decorate my apartment in Undermine. I want a house in Silvermoon. Orgrimmar, not so much, you can keep that one, it's fine. I even want to have an excuse to go back and visit my farm in Pandaria. But I do understand where Blizzard is coming from as well. If we all have too many houses in too many places, not only does it risk being overwhelming, it risks being isolating as we inevitably divide up and disappear into whatever house is our favorite. Having just the two plots in just the two neighborhoods forces players into specially designed active zones where they can get to know their neighbors and develop relationships over time. I get it, but I still want those smaller houses in cities though. And I still think they can work if you just limit them and combine them with portals. In Elder Scrolls Online, every house you own, you can teleport to it at any time. And it has been confirmed that we will be able to hearth to our player homes on a separate hearthstone that's specifically for that home, like the Dalaran hearthstone. Now, imagine if places like the Undermine apartment were converted into limited housing. You can't do everything in this house that you could do in a player home. Like, you can't move around the walls or floors or place down a Lorewalker Cho bench or anything like that. But you can still change some of the decorations, the wallpaper, the bed, move decorations around, etc. In other words, you can still personalize these minor homes, but you wouldn't want to live in them. And then you make these homes portals that you can access from your main house. So a bit like World of Warcraft's current portal rooms. Obtaining these homes and portals would have to be extremely easy. You want convenience like that to be available to everyone, not just the people who are interested in housing. But introducing these smaller houses as portals gives us reason to briefly visit and decorate them, while at the same time encouraging us to leave them as well. If I want to head to Orgrimmar, taking a portal through my own little Orgrimmar apartment isn't going to isolate me any more than taking portals to and from Orgrimmar's portal room does. The only thing you risk emptying out is the city portal rooms, which, like, who cares? They can't even put the current expansion portal upstairs where it's convenient. Like, they're not even good. And again, imagine if part of hanging out in Undermine involved being rewarded with Undermine-themed decorations that we use to decorate our homes, but also use to lightly decorate our little Undermine apartments as well. Since I do have to keep going to Undermine for the foreseeable future because of how ridiculous the cartel reputation grind is, I'd love to just be able to take a portal from my home, rather than go through Donegal every time. Basically what I'm saying is, you can't give me a whole apartment and then tell me this isn't player housing, Blizzard. This is like giving me the farm and then telling me how limited and restricted decorating that would be all over again. Just let me decorate my own houses.
It's the only thing I ever wanted.
Next on my list, weather and lighting. And I know we're getting control over weather and lighting. Blizzard have already made it clear that our windows won't be tied to outside weather or lighting. If you want a bright sunny day all day every day in one room and a gothic night to reign supreme in another, you'll be allowed to do that. Which is great and all, but I'm also kinda disappointed. One thing I love about World of Warcraft is the fact that the weather changes, and the fact that the sun rises and sets to reflect a genuine day-night cycle. I also don't want to be fiddling with my own Windows settings every time it's appropriate that things get dark or light. Basically, I think we should have the option to set our windows to the same timer the outside game world uses, or at the very least, set our own timers. And the same goes for weather. We should be able to randomize the weather outside, but also even be able to have it randomized within seasons. So like in the winter you can have some snowy days, some rainy days, some cloudy days, etc. And yes, I am asking to be able to set the ambient noise, not just the music, so that you can sit inside a library and read to the sound of a thunderstorm outside while a fire crackles next to you. Tell me you don't want that. I won't believe you. Moving on to something else a lot of people are asking for, the ability to save and share house designs. I am very much for this idea, obviously, for a lot of the same reasons other people have cited, like imagine being able to become a professional decorator who designs houses for other people. It would be great for creativity and for the community. But I'd also like to take the idea of being able to save certain housing looks one step further and suggest the ability to randomize. Kinda like the warband screen. One of the great options is that you can ask it to randomly choose from your favorite. Alternatively, you can set different campsites for different groups. Now, imagine applying this to houses. Imagine every time you walk into your front door, you could end up in a different house, based on a list of your favorite designs. Or imagine that you could set one specific design to only activate on, say, your Orc Hunter, and another design to activate on your Blood Elf Mage. This would effectively solve the problem that's been created by the whole only having one house per neighborhood thing. Your alts can still have their own houses if you really want them to, and if you don't, they can still share yours. This is mostly just for the inside of houses. The outside might have to be more restricted since they appear in the neighborhoods. But on the other hand, I don't hate the idea of our houses even changing on the outside depending on what character you're logged into. I think it'd be quite cute if your guildmates could see at a glance which character you were last playing, because the house in your plot has changed from an orc-style garrison to a mage's tower. One thing I'm really convinced we need to have, and really worried we won't have, is storage. I would understand if Blizzard doesn't want us to have access to our banks inside our houses. That sort of convenience helped cause the isolation problem with garrisons, so they want to avoid it. But you can't give me a house full of cupboards and chests and, I don't know, barrels, and tell me I can't put anything in them. Storage in houses should be both plentiful and limited. In other words, each chest isn't a new way to access the bank, but every storage container should have some storage slots in them, which could also be limited to the type of container it is. Allow me to buy a food cupboard that only lets me put food in it. I promise you, I'm filling that thing up with weird and wonderful treats I've found across the world just because I can. On this subject, I also think housing should have at least something that gives players a reason to eat at a table or sleep on a bed. This doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking. Maybe if you eat at a table, the food buff lasts for 2 hours instead of 1. Maybe if you put your character to sleep on a bed before logging out, they gain rested XP at twice the rate they would usually. Nothing that makes these things essential, just enough to give them some purpose. Now, onto something slightly different. A lot of people have suggested paintings or screenshots that you can place on your walls, and I think those are fantastic ideas. But what about a nice big in-game to-do list, like a bulletin board or a chore list? I don't mean a place where you can pick up quests. That would have the same isolating problem that garrisons have. I mean a table that you can put up on your wall that has certain daily or weekly tasks in it that are automatically crossed off when you complete them. One in-game mod that I use is Chore Tracker, which can be configured according to the expansion or patch features you're most interested in making sure you get done every week. I love the idea of being able to have this list up on my wall inside my house, like a blackboard. Some of you may be horrified at the very notion. Who could possibly want a list of chores in their game? How depressing is that? But I don't know, I just like the idea of my character being able to plan out what they intend to do that day based on some easy to read signs on their wall. A feature like this could also help Blizzard communicate to players what they should be doing because they don't always know. You could even include things like renown or reputation trackers, achievement trackers, questline trackers, things like that. I think a feature like this has the potential to go great with things like weapon and armor displays and mannequins. Like, imagine a reputation tracker for the Darkfuse cartel above an empty mannequin, and then once you've reached Exalted, you can put the Darkfuse jacket on that mannequin. Maybe I'm a freak, but I think it's a great idea. Before I wrap up this video, I do want to say something that I know a lot of you won't like or agree with, but hear me out. I don't want a new profession with player housing, and I'm very relieved that it doesn't seem like one is planned. First of all, there's almost always a problem that comes with anything new. It ends up feeling favored by the game for a while. And I want player housing to be favored, but if a new profession is added as well, then I just don't believe player housing would be able to avoid favoring that profession, and I think that would be a shame. Instead, Blizzard are being forced to really consider the professions we already have and how they can fit into housing. And hopefully that will mean they all wind up with semi-equal treatment. I really think this is important to make sure no profession is left behind. Player housing has always had the potential to completely revitalize professions with evergreen content, but for that to be successful, all the professions should feel strongly like they have something new and shiny to offer. A profession created with player housing in mind would just naturally outshine the others. It'd be too new, too shiny. How could my precious engineering possibly compete? I'm not saying we can't ever possibly get a new profession for housing. I just think the whole housing system should get a chance to settle first. I'd also rather see secondary professions get a bit of love and attention for once. Fishing equipment slots that allow you to wear your hat and your Booty Bay boots are long overdue. Archaeology is still waiting for an overhaul. Let's see the professions that we have get some love and attention before bringing in any new ones to split the devs' attention further. Also, am I the only one who remembers lumberjacking in Warlords of Draenor? It wasn't all that riveting. I'm really not sure why anyone seems to want to bring that back. But that's just me. What are your thoughts on player housing? Is there anything you would love to see? Anything you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, you can also feel free to like, subscribe, share, sign up for notifications so you never miss another video, all that good YouTube stuff. You can also join me in thanking my Patreons who are helping to keep this channel alive. Finally, you can occasionally find me on Twitch, where I'm always happy to talk about all things lore. So while that's all for now, hopefully I'll see you again soon.